In 1930s America, there was one man whose voice alone could shake the halls of power. A Catholic priest, speaking through the crackle of the radio, so powerful and relentless that America's politicians feared him. He was a Catholic priest, an Irish American. His name was Father Charles Coughlin, and for a time he was one of the most influential and most dangerous men in the country. In the 1930s, Coughlin's radio sermons reached up to 30 million listeners a week. Nearly 1 in 4 Americans. He didn't just speak about the gospel. He spoke about economics, about conspiracies, about Roosevelt, about war and peace. And for nearly a decade, America trembled. To understand Coughlin, you have to understand the world that produced him. Born in 1891 in Hamilton, Ontario, to Irish Catholic parents, he grew up in a community still shadowed by centuries of British suspicion and Protestant hostility. Irish Catholics carried scars of famine, colonization, and exclusion. When Coughlin came to Detroit as a young priest in the 1920s, he found those same tensions alive in America. The Ku Klux Klan burned crosses against Catholics. Immigrants crowded into factories. The working poor prayed for hope. Coughlin's parish in Royal Oak was small, but he had a gift, the microphone. His voice was warm, commanding, and Irish-tinged. When he spoke into the radio, listeners felt like he was in their living rooms. At first he preached devotion and comfort, but soon his sermons would ride the waves of national crisis. The stock market crashed in 1929. Factories closed, banks collapsed, millions lost everything. In that vacuum of trust, Father Coughlin's voice was irresistible. His broadcasts mixed faith with fiery politics. He denounced money changers on Wall Street, condemned the Federal Reserve, and promised that Christian justice would deliver America. By 1930, he wasn't just a Detroit priest, he was a national celebrity. Estimates put his audience between 20 and 30 million. His mailroom overflowed with hundreds of thousands of letters a week, more than most politicians received in a year. One reporter wrote, "His voice seems to come not from a microphone, but from a pulpit raised above the whole nation." For Irish Catholics, Coughlin was a symbol, a priest with national influence speaking to their struggles. For generations, Irish had been mocked as drunkards, papists and traitors, but in Coughlin they saw power, the power of their church, their identity, their place in America. Yet Irish Catholics were not united. Some admired him, others feared he would drag their community into scandal. The tension between identity and extremism would define his career. In 1932, Father Coughlin endorsed Franklin D. Roosevelt. "Roosevelt or ruin," he proclaimed. At first, he was one of Roosevelt's greatest allies. He called the New Deal Christ's deal. His support brought millions of Catholic working-class votes into Roosevelt's camp. But Coughlin was not content to cheer from the sidelines. He wanted Roosevelt to nationalize banks, dismantle the Federal Reserve, and seize Wall Street. When Roosevelt refused, Coughlin turned on him. The New Deal, he now declared, was a raw deal. Roosevelt's Interior Secretary Harold Ickes shot back, "Father Coughlin is the voice of fascism in America." And Roosevelt himself muttered privately, "One of the most dangerous men in the country." By 1934, Coughlin had transformed from radio priest to political leader. He launched the National Union for Social Justice, a movement that claimed millions of members. Its platform promised jobs, pensions, and workers' rights. On the surface, it sounded progressive. But in Coughlin's speeches, blame always circled back to shadowy forces, bankers, internationalists, and increasingly, Jews. At rallies, followers waved banners of the cross alongside anti-communist slogans. He was building not just a following, but a crusade. Coughlin wasn't alone. Across Europe, priests and religious figures flirted with fascism. In Spain, priests blessed Franco's troops. In Croatia, Catholic clergy supported the Ustaza. Religion and authoritarianism made a dangerous cocktail. Coughlin was America's version. The collar gave him legitimacy, the microphone gave him reach. In 1936, Coughlin tried to turn his mass following into political power. He joined forces with William Lemke and remnants of Huey Long's movement to form the Union Party. He declared, "The time has come for action, not for words. Tens of thousands packed rallies. But the Union Party collapsed in the election. Roosevelt crushed them. Coughlin's attempt at king-making had failed. But failure did not humble him. It radicalized him. By the late 1930s, Coughlin's sermons grew venomous. His newspaper, Social Justice, published anti-Semitic cartoons and reprinted Nazi propaganda. He read the protocols of the Elders of Zion aloud to millions. He sneered, "When we get through with the Jews in America, they'll think the treatment they received in Germany was nothing." Jewish leaders condemned him as Hitler's mouthpiece in a Roman collar. The New York Times warned, "Father Coughlin plays with fire when he mixes faith with fury." Coughlin praised Mussolini's corporatism. He admired Hitler's fight against communism. He demanded America stay out of war. "Fascism is on the march," he declared, "and God help democracy when it meets it." Congress saw danger. A 1939 report concluded, "Father Coughlin gives aid and comfort to our enemies abroad." For many Americans, he was no longer just a loud priest. He was a traitor. Roosevelt didn't confront Coughlin directly. But behind the scenes, his administration fought him. The FCC pressured radio stations. The post office monitored his publications. The FBI tracked his followers. The White House wanted him gone, without turning him into a martyr. Coughlin's rhetoric spilled into the streets. Followers formed the Christian Front, militant Catholic groups in New York and beyond. They held rallies, brawled with opponents, and some even plotted violence. The FBI uncovered weapons stockpiles. Agents described Coughlin as a man who thrives on instability but fears irrelevance. He wasn't just broadcasting hate, he was inspiring sedition. In 1942, the hammer fell. The post office banned Social Justice from the mail, labeling it seditious. Archbishop Edward Mooney of Detroit delivered the final blow. He ordered Coughlin to retreat into parish work or be stripped of his priesthood. Coughlin fumed, "When America ceases to be Christian, it ceases to be America." But the New York Herald Tribune headline told the truth. Father Coughlin is through. After nearly a decade of terrorizing the airwaves, the radio priest was silenced. Coughlin spent the rest of his life in quiet parish service. He retired in 1966. When he died in 1979, he was barely remembered by the public. But his boast still haunts, "The microphone is mightier than the sword." Historians call him America's first mass media demagogue. Alan Brinkley wrote, "He was the forerunner of talk radio, a populist who discovered the political weapon of broadcasting anger." PBS put it bluntly, "He terrified America before America even had a word for demagogue." He was the Irish fascist priest who terrified America and the warning sign we ignored. So here's the question. Could it happen again? Could another Coughlin rise, not from a radio tower but from a live stream, a podcast or a viral video? Because history doesn't just repeat. Sometimes it broadcasts. If this story shook you, hit like, share and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, is America ready for another Father Coughlin?